Okay, so we reviewed yesterday last week's class, and now we're gonna go ahead and start. Can someone confirm if you can see my slideshow properly as I'm moving the screens?
We can see it better.
Thank you so much. So we covered part one and part two. Part two we had. Okay, so now we're in part three, and part three is SDLC. So what is SDLC? So SDLC is SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle. So basically, SDLC is the way the process that we follow to build a software product. Just know this industry is process oriented, especially software testing, which is what we are learning. It's a process-oriented job. We need to follow process, not just the testing, also development and everything else. It requires to follow process, certain process. So as DLC stands for software development lifecycle, it is entire process of formal and logical steps taken to develop a software product. So this is the definition, bookish definition. There are multiple ways of written. Software development lifecycle is the overall process by which entire software is developed. This is probably the easiest one. Software development lifecycle is the process by which software industry to design, development, and test high quality software. The SDLC aims to provide high quality software that meets or exceeds customer expectation, reaches completion within timeline and within the estimated cost. So third answer, it was written by one of our students couple of batch back, and I really liked it, and I added it here. That explains everything. So first answer, it's all same. Essentially, these are all same, right? It's just we try to give you different views so that it is easier for you to understand. Because we have some experts in our class, they understand, but we also have people joining from different part of the world who the English is not their first, second, or third language, so they have issues, and we try to help everybody here. So we explain things differently, make it easier for everybody to understand. That's the goal. So first one is a little bit technical. Second one is pretty straightforward. Third one explains everything basically. So that's SDLC, and everyone must understand SDLC. If you understand SDLC, you're halfway done. Okay, so SDLC has different phases. So that's the first part is the definition, and then we have different phases of SDLC. We have user requirement phase, planning phase, design phase, development phase, testing phase, UAT phase, and deployment or production phase. Let's look at it differently. Okay. So let's see here. Again, what are the phases of SDLC? First phase is the user requirement phase. Second phase is the planning phase. Third phase is the design phase. Then fourth, development phase. Then testing phase and UAT phase. UAT stands for user acceptance phase. Deployment or production phase. Then we have cutover phase, maintenance phase, and then configuration management phase. So here we have 10, which is covering all and every little phases that SDLC has. Previously, I think we added only 7. So 7, these are the mandatory ones, must know, must understand. And I guess here we added 3 more, which is last 3. Cutover, maintenance, and configuration, and we'll explain why. These are probably not um, mandatory, but good to know. Anyway, these are different phases of SDLC. So let's continue on the diagram. So this is the diagram of SDLC, and we'll spend quite a bit of time today to understand this, as this is very, very crucial. So take a moment to look into this one and try to relate the phases we talked about on the previous slide. Okay. All right. So, so user requirement phase. This is the first phase we mentioned, right? In the previous slide. User requirement phase is here. Then if you see, we have planning phase right here. Then we have design phase, development phase, system testing phase, UAT phase, and production phase. This 7 is crucial. Everybody must understand. So we're going to talk about this 7 first. Um, so if you look at user requirement phase, what happens here? Remember, I said, this is a process-oriented field, so we're going to start by understanding the process. User requirement phase is where requirement gets defined. This is where, um, you know, initially high-level management will define the requirement. What is it that we are going to build? Let's think about Facebook for a moment, right? Let's say Mark Zuckerberg and his team, high-level team, or maybe just him, he started thinking about how I want to build a platform that is called Facebook, and that is something will connect people and will have the functionality of messaging each other. It will have tagging functionality. It will have other things, so many more things. So if you think about day one, he probably didn't have the entire picture, but he had a picture, he had an image, he had a vision like, okay, I want to build an application where, people can connect from their family, from their schools, from their work and things like this. So that's how Facebook was built, right? So he had this vision, right? And now what did he do? He put it in a paper probably. And that's it for the time being. Now he's all alone sitting with his idea. And at that point, he doesn't have anybody, right? He doesn't have anybody to work on. Now, so once he has his requirement, right, which is this understanding of what he wants to build. At that point, he probably drafted something in a paper. I don't know when Facebook was built, maybe 20 years by now. So at that point, I guess technology was new, right? And he probably written this in his a document or something. And then he had a choice, right? Whether to build this within his own company or go give it to a software company to build it. So it can go two-way, right? Either he can build his company, and how does he build his company? He needs to start hiring people. If he has the money, he has to go and hire software developers, software testers, business analysts, project managers, things like this. So I don't know how he went about it. I think initially he had somebody working a different company, or maybe then he built his team. I don't know. But the main thing is he had an idea, he had a vision, so he had it in place. And this is where he had it in user requirement phase. And then let's say he built his own team. So in here he has his business analysts. Business analysts are the ones usually responsible for gathering requirement, finalizing requirement, making changes to the to requirement to make it more technology industry standard and technical and things in this nature. So when Mark is gathering and he's drafting his requirement, it would be somewhat of a draft version, and then he will come sit with business owners and say, hey, I have this idea, I want to build this, can you help me documenting it, finalizing it, and things like this, things in those nature. So he or she, business analyst, sitting here, getting his so getting his document and information and finalizing it and converting in a way that is standard of the industry, the technology industry. And once that is finalized by this business analyst person here, that person would send it to designer right here. Designer sits here, send it to designer to design it, and designer will send it to developers once the designing is done. So here a document is built, right? And then also is designed here. So document would be having words, bullet points and things like this, but you also need a physical mock-up or diagram for the developers and testers to work on and build it, right? This application usually gets built here and gets tested here, and then of course designed here, and all the uh, documentation gets done here. So again, so after designing is done, designer will send it to the developers for developing it, and developers will be sitting here, and depending on the company and the project, there will be I can't tell how many developers. If it's a small project, and it's hard to give a number. If it's a small project, 5, 10, 15 developers, big project. So if we say Facebook, I'm talking about hundreds of developers, not hundreds, maybe more, thousands of developers, because it's a big application. But initially, of course, it wasn't like this. They started small. Probably they have 10, 15 developers. Anyway, so developers are sitting here, and how do they build that application? They write code in programming language, and the programming language can be Java, JavaScript, Python, Ruby, and many more, depending on what technology that they're using. Their front-end technology, their back-end technology. So all of this being done here, so they write the code, and after writing the code, they do their internal testing as well. And we'll talk about that later, what type of testing they do internally. And once that is done, they send it to the testing phase. And in testing phase, all kind of testing happens. There's so many different type of testing happens in testing phase. Software test engineers are sitting here. They do their testing. They have their own processes. They follow the process. And once all of this is done, then it goes to UAT. UAT is user acceptance testing. So that's where another level of testing gets done, which is done by the client. And I'll explain this a little bit more in a second. And then once that is accepted, right, UAT folks, when they accept that application, it goes to production. Production is where the application is live, right? Application can be used. So when so these are different gates, guys. You can see user requirement is like a box type of thing. So they have to get their work done fully, then only it is available in the next phase. The next person or the group of people, they have to complete their work, then only it goes to the next group of people. So these are gates, right? One after another, and this group of people has to complete their job so that it is available in the next phase, next to the next group of people. If you look at so there's one way of doing it, right? I said, let's say Mark, he had this idea and then he built his own team, which is perfect, which is the way to go. If you have the money, you have the idea, you implement it within your own company, you build your team, you hire a couple of business analysts, couple of designer, multiple developers, and multiple testers, and then UAT folks, and then done. So your application is built internally. But let's say in a situation where Mark does not have his own team and he doesn't want to build his own team, whatever reason, financial or whatnot, he does not have that. Now he can go to different direction. He can say, okay, I have my idea. I'm going to give it to an IT company who builds software, and I'm going to give them my requirement, and I'll tell them to build it. Once they build it, they will give it back to me so that, I'll have it accessible for my customers. So that's the second direction, and that direction is also quite popular, and it was more popular back in the days. So he would be coming up with his requirement here, and then he will be inviting, let's say, company A, B or C, multiple companies, and let's just work with one company. Okay, let's say he'll go to a company and say, hey guys, I have this idea. Can you guys implement it? And they'll be like, yeah, sure, but let me understand your requirement. Let me understand your idea. So here with Mark, who is Mark? Mark is the business, right? Mark is the client who wants to build an application. Now, and um, and this is the IT company. You see the box right here. This is an IT company, right? When I say box, I'm talking about this. This is the IT company. And within this box, whoever you're seeing sitting there, like the planner, within the planning phase, business analyst, designer, developers, tester, these are they're within this company, right? No one else has access to them. That's why we have this boundary, right? So now Mark comes here and talks to this company's managers and project managers and business analysts, and says, okay, I have this idea. I need your help to implement it. Now they're going to send their business analyst here and say, okay, Mark, talk to them. They will finalize the documentation with you, timeline with you, and also, we'll finalize the budget. So here, Mark is the client. He's sitting and he invites this company's business analyst, and they go back and forth, try to understand what is it that Mark wants to build and what is it that we should implement. And once that is usually is not clear in the first meeting or second or third, because there is so much complexity, so many dependencies there. So once, all of this, versioning and then back and forth and clarification is given, now we talked about timeline, like how much time it will take. So let's say initial version of Facebook, at least it took them 6 months, right? So 6 months. So let's say, between Mark and the business analyst, they agreed with 6 months to build the initial version, send it to the client, and if client likes it, he will send it to the users. Right. So then this was this was the timeline. Then there will be budgeting. How much it will cost, how much Mark has to pay to this company, and how many different phases he will be paying and things like this, right? So let's say 6 months. Agreed. And the budgeting, it was done also. Now this business analyst, once everything is finalized here, will take this document from here to here, right here. It will take this document here to here, and that's it. Mark disappears. He does not have access to any of this until here, right here. So that's why we have this boundary. So it's important that you understand like this boundary right here. So they agreed right here, Mark and our business, right? As our business analyst, they agreed right here that it will take 6 months, right? Fine. Mark is waiting, doing his other things, maybe vacationing. Is done. He doesn't have access anymore. Now, planning phase. This is where our team, our business analyst starts plotting. Now, this person got the idea from here, and that is written only in plain English language. Now, this is not good enough for software industry. This person will convert it to a technical language, which is called SRS. I'm going to give you the name in a bit. but let's just understand for the time being, they convert it more in a technical document which is more understandable to the technology team. And who are the technology team? The designer, developers, and testers, right? Once business analyst converts this document in a technical language, they will send it to the designer, and designer right away will start designing, creating mockups. Mockups is the initial view of how that application will look like. And once that is appended to this document, it will be sent to the developer saying, hey, this is the document. It has all the requirements and also design documents. Please go ahead and build it. Now, developers will build this application right here. They will do they will start coding in an organized manner, and that application is and should work for the users. And once that is done, they will send it to the testers and saying that, hey, we have built it, please go ahead and test it. And tester will test it. Now comes Mark. You see right here, I said so 6 months was agreed, now he's gone. Now you will see him again. Give me 1 second, please. Okay. So Mark was here. So he was here and then he's gone, and now you're gonna see him again here. Sorry, my drawing ability is not so good. Let's see what's happening here. Okay. Yeah. So right here, not from inside, from outside only. So Mark has to come from outside. He does not have access to the box. He doesn't know, like, how they're building it, because it is within this box and within this time frame. Once 6 months passes from here, now he's invited again here, saying, guys, we completed this application. Um, Go ahead, we completed it and we tested it, and go ahead and approve it. So Mark will say, right, yes, thank you very much. You built it, but I want to test it on my own to make sure that it does what you guys what I was what we initially signed up for, right? So what Mark will do, he will bring his own testers and he tests it. And usually there is a separate group of people. Usually it is third party that he can bring, or he can bring his own tester, or he can test himself. So from here, right, this point onward, Mark is not accessing this application, but it is being accessed by internal team within here. And once they give green signal, Mark will come back here with his own users, with his own testers, and test it. Now, if he feels that, okay, this is good enough for me, then it will go to production right here. And production, where you'll see you as a user will be able to access it. So let's say initial 6 months when Facebook was under this requirement phase, and then this all of these phases, you and I did not have access to Facebook. Once Facebook went to production right here, then only we were able to access Facebook. So that's the life cycle of how an application gets built. I hope I didn't confuse you guys. Um, any questions? Are you there, guys? Was it confusing? Do you have any questions?
No questions from me. I'm following along. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Anyone else has questions? This is so crucial that we understand this. I try my best to give you some examples. Okay, let's dive deeper into this. So as you can see, right, you can do multiple things here, right? You could do multiple things, right? And you could build an application multiple different ways. One, and I have drawn both scenarios, right? I've said that, you could build your own team and you could go build the software, or you can, you have an idea, you can hire a third party to build your software. These are the two different ways to build the software. Now, now we need to get a little bit more technical here. And I'll give you, please take some notes, guys. And if you don't have pen and paper, watch the video again, take notes, write down things. It will be easy to understand. Trust me. Been there, done it, and yeah, it's always necessary. Anyway, let's look at user requirement phase. User requirement phase right here. In user requirement phase, user comes in with their ideas and their needs. And user comes with a document called URS, user requirement specification. So this document that I was talking about earlier is usually written in plain English language, right? It does not have technicality behind it because a basic person, a user, a client who has some idea, who overnight or over the time, certain amount of time, decided like, I have an idea and I think it's going to be profitable, and whatever reason they want to implement it, and they would write this in a plain document, which is called URS, user requirement specification. And so user sits here with the user requirement specification and have meetings with BA. BA stands for business analyst or project managers, business analyst or and project manager, usually both, right? Project manager deals with project related stuff, budgeting and timeline and everything, and business analyst is responsible for gathering the requirement, understanding the requirement, and accepting the requirement from the user. And then this business analyst will bring this plain language URS document here and will convert it to a technical document called SRS. So basically, if you look at this phase, who sits here and what happens? So here only business analyst, business BA sits here initially with URS. URS is what? Is the user requirement specification is given from this phase and will convert it to a technical document called SRS, System Requirement Specification. Now, when I say technical requirement, it's not written in some science language or whatever. It's still written in English, but it uses the terminology that is IT standard. So URS is the plain English language document, and then SRS is more of a technical document. So that happens. So business analysts, so understand three key thing here, right? Business analyst is one key thing and person that sits here with what? With URS, and what he or she does, converts it to SRS. These are the three things. So these are the notes you should take. Once that is done, then SRS gets sent to designer for designing. So SRS designers are sitting here and they get the SRS and they create mock-ups of it, a diagram of it, architecture of it. Once that is done, right, that documents get sent to developers, development team. What they do, they start their coding, they start the process of building the software. Once they're done building the application, they do some internal testing. They perform two type of testing: unit testing and integration testing. Unit and integration testing is done here. And we'll give you definition of unit and integration testing, but they're mainly testing the code itself. They don't test the UI. What is UI, right? When you go to www.facebook.com, the things you see is the UI, user interface. You see the UI, right? That as we are seeing as a user, but there is a backend behind it where you don't see any of this. You only see code. That is what developers will test, right? There is two part to an application. Every single application has two parts. One is what you see as a user, which is the pretty face. And there is in the background, there is a more darker face, which is only lines and lines of codes. There is no UI, there is no functionality. It is only code, right? So that code is what makes that software UI pretty and makes it work, right? So developers, they will not look into that UI. They will test the code itself. So they, again, here, right? So this is done right here. We are here. So developers will perform two type of testing: unit and integration testing, which is code level testing, right? So basically four things here, right? One thing is developers are sitting here and they are coding, which is nothing but building an application. Once that is done, they are performing two types of testing, which is unit and integration testing. So these are the things you need to understand and remember. Then comes testing, system testing phase. This is where so many things happens. I will need like 4 classes on this to explain what happens here. But for now, just understand the testers are sitting here. They perform STLC. STLC. Here you see Sdlc, but in here it would be STLC. Instead of D, it will be T. So software testing phase is where testers performs their testing process. STLC is software testing lifecycle. So you can say testers are sitting here, and once given the green light, they start their testing lifecycle, software testing lifecycle. That's what happens here. And software testing lifecycle is a lot. We do so much here, right? So once that is done, that now it's an application. It's not, now it's no longer a document. After this phase, this becomes an application. Well, after in this phase, now it is a functioning application. And once the testing process is done, we move it to UAT, and UAT is where client comes back and say, okay, you built it, thank you very much, but I will reconfirm that it is working as expected. So UAD folks, usually they come in and they do their own testing. Usually they find some issues. They would say, okay, this was like this, and this was supposed to be like this, or this is not working as expected. So if we agree that they make sense, they're catching the right issues, then we'll go back and fix it, right? It will come back here directly, and they will push it to us again, and we'll push it back to them. So there are some back and forth here. They're back and forth between these two phases. They're back and forth between these three phases, basically. So they develop something, we test it, and we say, okay, you developed it, but there are 10 issues, 20 issues, fix it. They will, back and forth. We'll push it back. They will fix it again, send it to us. Then we'll test it again. Then there are other issues, and there's so much happens here, a lot of back and forth. Same thing here, but less here. Usually we test it, and by then, once the testing is done, the expectation is it should not have bugs, or it should have only limited number of bugs. So in here, UAT phase, usually there's some noise, but not so much. And once the UAT is done, now it goes to production. In production, you see it's outside the boundary, right? In production, everyone has access to it. Everyone now can go and use the Facebook, right? So that's how initial version of Facebook was built. We're going to talk about um, how we got here, right? Facebook, when they built it, it was, a small application, and how we got here, we're going to talk about it. But let's see if you have understanding of what we covered till now. I would like a volunteer from new or old batch, if you can quickly go over what we covered and what is your understanding of each phases, what is your understanding of SDLC. You'll make mistakes, no problem, but giving a shot to explain this would be really nice for you and for us to hear. Any volunteer? Come on, guys, one person. It's fine, Every batch, we do this practice and it works good. You're gonna make 20 mistakes. That's also fine. You only learn when you make mistakes. Who wants to try? Really? No volunteers? One person. Arfidi, you wanna try? If you are there, Brother Afridi. Okay, let me give multiple names. Afridi, Maksud, Brother Nirav.
You want me to try?
Yes, please, if you can.
Okay. So Sdlc, that's a life cycle of our main part, the software. So what does Sdlc stand for? Sdlc stand for system.
Are you there? No, Afridi is driving, so he cannot.
Maksud, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, I didn't notice somehow. My bad. So let me start from the beginning again. So Sdlc is a software development life cycle. So that has specific phase or parts that we need to follow one by one if we need to go next step. That means the other step has to be done. So there are a couple of steps which is very important. Is user requirement phase, planning phase, design phase, development phase, and system testing phase. So in user requirement phase, there are two people working in that phase. One is client and another one is business analyst. So the client who have an idea about a software, maybe as an example, Amazon. So the client makes up with an idea like Amazon, I'm gonna make an app, that's where we're gonna sell the products. So that's the idea from the client. And the business analyst who analyze the cost, the time, and everything for that plan. Sorry, just a moment. So when the client comes with a plain and very simple requirement, that's called SRS, user requirement specifications. After that, we move to the planning phase, where the uh, business analyst make the simple plain language move to the very systematic language, or maybe into the software language where can developers or maybe IT guys can work on it. planning phase are converted to URS, which is called user requirement specifications.
Maksud, you're muted again. I think Maksud dropped. Okay, that's fine. Anybody else wants to give it a try? Brother Mustak, what do you think?
So I can go ahead with what I understood.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So SDLC stand for software development lifecycle,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, software development life cycle. And as Brother Kadir was talking about how it's broken up into many different parts. There's a user requirement phase. He talked about
Sorry, I just disconnected accidentally.
No
okay,
problem.
yeah,
No problem, Maksud.
he can take it from
Mustak,
here.
Mustak, you continue.
Oh, okay, I can okay. And then he started talking about how from user requirement phase, then going into planning, designing, and then he talked about how you can hire a third party to make the software for you. And there's after it's completed, there's a maintenance phase where you check in and there's testing if it's running properly. And even when the web application is not launched or SDLC. So SDLC is a part of the web application, right?
No, it is the
Process.
entire process
It's
of
yeah, process.
developing a software from start to finish.
Okay, okay. So even before what do you say? Even before it's launched a web application, there are people still using it to test it out. As this is what I remember, and there's one more thing that he talked about was uh that's it from me.
Okay, very good. So I'll walk you through. Maksud, please stay unmuted. Mustak?
I'm unmuted.
Yes. So when you see SDLC, you automatically should understand that it's an abbreviation, and that abbreviation is Software Development Lifecycle.
Yeah.
And when you see this picture, you see it has some boxes, right? And those boxes are phases. So you can start from the first phase. The first phase is the user requirement phase. Then after that comes the planning phase. After the planning phase is done, then comes design phase. After design phase is done, then comes development phase. After development phase comes what? Maksud?
It comes system testing phase. Oh,
Right.
sorry. I thought,
Correct. Yes,
go ahead.
system testing phase. What comes after system testing phase?
UAT.
Right. And
Then after that,
what comes after UAT phase?
so after UAT, we will do the deployment or production,
Mm-hmm.
then cut over phase, then maintenance phase, then
Right.
configuration phase.
Right. So you just have to understand that it goes through these phases.
Yep.
A previous phase has to be completed for the next phase to start. And that is pretty much how you explain SDLC in a high level. Now, when you want to deep dive and go into the technicals of what happens in each of those phases, like what happens, who works there, what happens, what type of work gets done, and what is the outcome of those phases, right? So let's start by who works in those phases and what do they do and what outcome do they have? What is the outcome of that phase? So first phase is the user requirement phase. Who is sitting there? It's the user. It's the person who is developing the person who wants this software to be developed, and it is the user. And what does he have? He has his requirements written down in a URS document. So a simple plain English document that says, I want this built, this built, this built to work like this, like this, like this. And he saves it in a document called URS. After that, he has his requirements. He goes to a software building team company, right? So he goes to a company and he gives them his URS, his requirements, what he wants to build. And he gives it to the business analyst. This is in the planning phase. When he comes to the IT company, he has a meeting with the business analyst. Who has a meeting? The user. The user has a meeting with the business analyst. And what do they discuss over there? And what do they have over there? And what is the outcome of that process? So in that process, the user comes in with their URS and has a meeting with the business analyst to plan how the software is going to be developed. The business analyst takes the URS, the requirements, and converts that URS into a more technical document so that the software can be developed in a technical way. And the business analyst creates a document called SRS, System Requirement Specification. And that is the outcome of that planning phase. So the business analyst takes that SRS and gives it to the design team. So who is the design team? What happens in the design phase? Who works there and what is the outcome? So in the design phase, designers work in the design phase. What do they work with? They work with the SRS, Software Requirement Specification, that they got from the BA, from the planning phase. And they take that SRS and they design mock-ups. They make pictures and they make diagrams.
Application mainframe.
Yeah, so they come up with documentation and mock-ups, and that is the outcome of the design phase. We get mock-ups. The team gets mock-ups, and that is the outcome of the design phase. The designers make mock-ups in design phase. After that, the mock-ups are uh, provided along with the SRS. The SRS is given to the developers in the development phase. Who works in the development phase? The developers work in the development phase. What do they work with? They work with the SRS that they got from the planning phase, from the BA. And they take that SRS along with the design document, the mockups from the design phase that the developers submitted, and they work on developing the software. How do they work? They work by writing code, typing on keyboards and making the logic make sense and make that software do the specific functions by writing code. And what do we get out of that? The developers do some actions. Along with development, they do some testing on their own. They do specific types of testing that only developers do, which is called unit testing and integration testing. Developers do unit testing and integration testing after they have developed that part of code. After that, that is the outcome. Developers code, developers do unit testing, and developers do integration testing. Then what comes? The SRS comes. Understand the SRS is inside this entire team. Everybody in this development team is using the SRS. The SRS is the software requirement specification. So every member has access to that document. And it comes to the testing phase. Who works in the testing phase? The testers work in the testing phase. What do? They do a specific task. They do a specific process. What is that called? It is called STLC, software testing lifecycle. That is the entire process that testers uh, perform to do testing on the system to make sure the system is behaving as per the SRS, as per what the user wants. The testers take the SRS and they do testing based off of that. They also test the code. The developers have developed their code and they give it to the testing team. And the testers take the SRS and they take the code, the developed code, the system, what they developed, and the testers do their testing. What is the outcome of that? Outcome is testers give the okay to move it into the next phase. That is the outcome from the testing phase. The testers say, yes, we have tested it. Everything looks good. We can move it on to the next phase. What is the next phase? The next phase is the UAT phase. UAT, what does UAT mean? It means user acceptance testing. Who is the user? The user is the person who is paying for this software to be developed. The client, the user who is paying, that is the user. The UAT brings back the user. Before, the user was not involved here, but in UAT phase, the user comes back and he says, and we give it to the user and we say, we have done development, we have tested it, and everything looks good. Please take your software product. The user comes back and he says, yes, I will take it. I will have a look at it and I will do some testing on it. Either he does some testing or he hires some other testers to do some testing. So he takes what is the input? He takes the developed software and he gets it tested by a third party. And that happens in the UAT phase. And what is the outcome of that? The outcome is either the user likes it, and usually the user likes it and he takes it, right? So the outcome is UAT testing phase is complete. Everything looks good. When everything looks good, everybody is happy, only then does it go to production phase. What is production? Who is in production? Production phase means the software is all good and is ready to be uh, available to the public. The software goes live, meaning anybody that has internet access can access the software by through the World Wide Web, through the web, through internet, and it's available for all users that the client wanted to use. Some clients might have it all open. Some clients might have it a paid app. If it's a paid app, then whoever is paying for that app will have access to that application. And if it's a fully open software, then everybody will have access to that application. And that is in production phase. That is what happens in production phase. And then we finally have maintenance phase. Maintenance phase is a future phase where the client comes back and says he wants to change something. He wants to make an update. He wants to make this color different, or he wants to make this word different, or he wants to add another function. He wants to add more functions. That is when the user comes back to the IT company and says, I want this, and changed. I want this to be updated, and I want to add these few features. And that happens in the maintenance phase. Who does it? It is the development team goes back and starts this entire SDLC process all over again. And it is up to the user to request that, or even if the user does not request it, they might have other changes that they need to make. So that is what happens in maintenance phase. The software is live, but there are updates being made to the software. Does that make sense, everybody? Mustak, does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does, brother. But I have one question.
Yes.
You know how we talked about how we do everything in the SDLC phase,
Mhm.
and then user requirement phase comes back to UAT phase where we ask them to use the user to use the software once again, right?
Right.
And
Right.
then you said usually everyone the user likes, and then we go ahead. Just in case, if it's the user is not satisfied by it, we go back into the whole process.
Yeah, we go back, whatever the user does not like, we go back into the planning phase and we get
We do it step by step once again?
yeah, we
Okay.
go back and we plan it, design it, develop it, test it, and then come back to UAT.
Got you. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else has any other questions? Does the explanation make sense? Are you clear on all of the steps and who is working there and what is the input and what is the output of all of these phases? Remember, you have to know who works or who is involved in those phases, what they work with, and what is the outcome of that phase. Those are the three main topics that you should be concerned with each of these phases. I hope that makes sense, but it requires a lot of review and a lot of note taking. Please, I have given a lot of keywords. I hope everyone is keeping notes of all of these keywords that were given, and this is how you would review and keep note of all of these topics.